She earned her undergraduate degree from the Mississippi State University in wildlife, fishery, and aquaculture. She also has a master's degree from the University of Bristol, England, with a focus on global wildlife health and conservation.
Conversation's a big part of that.
Please welcome Brittany Laster.
Thank you. If I talk like this, can everyone hear me? Yes. Perfect. I hate microphones.
The only thing is we're recording it, and it needs to be picked up for the recording.
Okay,
for
never mind.
People who aren't able to be here.
Okay, never mind. All right, so I'm gonna, can I move this? All right, yeah, so I'm going to be talking about Crow, what we do. The 3 R's are behind me: rescue, rehabilitate, and release. Of course, those are really big. The release part is the favorite one. I am going to talk about what you can do if you find an animal that needs assistance. And I have a false ending to my PowerPoint just in case I go too long on that part, because I do have a habit of going on tangents and kind of going side to side and not sticking on the right thing. That's one right there. All right, yeah, so my name's Brittany. Thank you so much for that introduction. We're going to go ahead and start talking about it. This is Miss Shirley Walters. She was a post lady here on Sanibel. The causeway was opened in '63. Miss Shirley Walters would end up founding Crow. And so by the end of that first year of her finding a royal tern injured on the causeway, she and Dr. Phyllis Douglas would answer roughly 500 more distress calls. Now we see about 5,000 to 6,000 patients a year. Could not tell you how many calls that equals. It's probably about 20 times more than that. So quite a few calls still today. However, I love to talk about this because that one split decision she made on that causeway that day led to everything you're going to see on the PowerPoint. And for those of you that have visited Crow or that want to visit Crow, all of that because of that one decision. So butterfly effect is very real. All right, this is our mission. Basically, the rundown of it: we are a teaching hospital that want to treat wildlife through state-of-the-art veterinary medicine and research. Our programming goes everywhere from undergraduates to recent grad in our rehab or in education, all the way up to veterinarians. They have graduated, they have their vet degree, but they need practice just like in human medicine. And so through them, especially on the research side, we have 2 every year, and they stay with us for a year. They're going to be doing a research project with us. So a lot of the breakthroughs in wildlife medicine and how to keep them away before even having to come in here is thanks to that research here at Crow, but also all over the world. We do have a global reach, and so we are constantly working with rehab facilities in Florida, but also everywhere else too, so that we can inform one another on how best to help our wildlife that is struggling for a variety of reasons all over the place. Of course, education is quite the big part of that. I'm a little biased, but it is important. So when it comes to education, of course, we have our student programming for the future leaders and rehabilitators in the world. But we also, of course, need to talk to the public like you guys. Everyone, for the most part, loves wildlife. Most people don't go out of their way to harm wildlife on purpose. It's more of a not knowing situation. So if you don't know, how do you know to care about something? That's why education is important. A lot of people in my field start off wanting to be a vet, and then we learn there are other options outside of that. So I'm one of those. I ended up falling in love with education, especially working with ambassador animals. The picture of the crow on here is fitting because we're Crow, but this is also Crow-Aline. She's our newest ambassador at Crow. She became official around September, October, but she came in at the beginning of 2025. She came in and her feathers were clipped, and she was almost accepting food from the hand from the moment she arrived. So she was very habituated, potentially imprinted, fancy words, meaning they trust people and don't see us as a threat, and they might even think they're people. That's what it means to be imprinted. So for her, being unable to show the behaviors necessary to be in the wild, she could not be released. That and her feathers were clipped, showing someone had most likely kept her for at least a little bit. Luckily, when the feathers are clipped, those molt, they regrow, so she's fully capable of flight again now. That's something that people will use when they don't want their bird to fly away if they don't trust them. All right, so the bottom picture is very blurry, but that is our vet clinic itself. This one opened in 2008. Our original clinic opened in 85. And then we have our education center, which is maybe where y'all have seen if you've been driving by or if you have come to visit. That's the office that I'm in. That's where our visitor education is. And our gift shop. If you want to come by and spend money in the gift shop, we would never say no. There's some cute stuffed animals there. Then I have my breakdown. I updated this morning, so y'all are getting the newest information here. So in 2024, we treated just shy of 5,000. Last year, which is hard for me to say, I still want to say this year, we treated 5,050. Now, back in, I want to say it was 2021, we treated just above 6,000. That number was going up, and then around 2021, it went down, down, down. With the pandemic, fewer people were driving, fewer people were around, so fewer animals were getting hit by cars, but also fewer animals that were hurt or injured or orphaned for other reasons weren't being found. So that number did go down. And then, of course, Hurricane Ian literally knocked us out for about 6 months for us being at our clinic. So it hit September. I'm sure most of you got to enjoy that. With it hitting, we thought we'd be back that first weekend. We were not. We did fully evacuate staff and patients and, of course, our students and ambassadors. So we didn't leave anyone behind. We did move into North Fort Myers, where a hotel partners with us to keep certain rooms available in the case of needing to evacuate. And then some of those rooms with patients. Happens every time. They're aware of it. They're a pet-friendly hotel, but I don't think that means just anyone can bring a squirrel or fox for the most part. That's something we have to agree on with them. But yeah, so it's been a long time coming. We're almost fully back and even better than we were before Ian now, but that number went down because of it. We're starting to go back up. I think this is the first time since I've been here that we've breached 5,000 patients again. Of course, that's both good and bad. Then we have our breakdown. So for the most part, they're pretty similar. We have our unidentified. That animal is identified. It was a type of bird. It's just the system we use online didn't recognize its common name, so we couldn't get it logged in correctly. So it's a bird. It falls into the green here. You'll notice green is quite the picture on both of them. They make up 50-60% of our patient load every single year. There are tons of birds because we have so many aquatic habitats as well as terrestrial. So there's just this bird paradise for the most part. And then next you'll see our mammals. We do see quite a few of those. A large chunk of that is rabbit. They're very good at making more of themselves and at getting kidnapped. I'll explain that later. Then we have our pink slice here. That's reptilia. So those are reptiles. 90% of those, I didn't make that anyway, are going to be gopher tortoises. But we do also treat snakes and turtles, of course, such as peninsula cooters. Gopher tortoises are just easily spotted, and they're usually near the road, so they get seen quite often. Right now, we cannot treat sea turtles, but I'll talk more about that later when we get to the new development that we've got going on. You'll notice amphibia is 0.1% there and 0.4% there. Most people don't bring us frogs or little salamanders for the most part. Instead, that's usually going to be cane toads that are brought in for euthanasia for the most part. So cane toads, highly invasive and highly toxic. They can kill a dog in 20 minutes, unfortunately. What do you think our most prevalent species is? We have top 5. Can anyone guess any of them? I kind of gave one away already. Rabbits number 1. Raccoons.
Otter.
Not quite, but we do see a few otters. Right now we can't treat them because of our facility. It's not finished yet, but we do see a couple, just not that many compared to the others. Iguanas, we do see some, but they're invasive, so we can't treat them. We only treat native and migratory. And usually the only time someone's able to bring an iguana to us, meaning they were able to catch it, is if they've been hit by a car.
Owl.
Owls, we do see quite a few owls. We do see a lot of pelicans. Only one of the top 5 is a bird, though. The other 4 are actually mammals, which is the opposite of what I showed you, but it's because of baby season.
What about bats? We took you a bat once.
Yeah, so we do see bats. We've actually had quite a few come in the last couple months. We do treat them, again, native or migratory. We had a Mexican free-tailed bat, little brown bat, bonneted bat. We'll see them, yeah. We even had a mom come in with 3 babies on her back. She got too weak to fly away with the babies. They get heavy. Yeah, so our top 5 rabbits were almost 20% of the entirety of that caseload. That 5,050, a lot of rabbits. They make more of themselves very easily. A female rabbit born at the beginning of the year can have 500 descendants by the end of that same first year. They're very good at the whole propagating thing. After Ian, this table, we kind of talked about it a little, but after Ian, they did kind of disappear, whereas right before it, they were everywhere. I told them there was a conspiracy theory that SCCF was releasing them onto the island. And Chris Lekowicz was like, no, we're not releasing the rabbits. And we're over here like, only if they were orphaned? We're not propagating them. Yeah, and then we've got the Virginia opossum. They get hit by cars a lot, and then a lot of the time they have babies with them. They also go through their life cycle very quick and have as many babies as they can. So it's very much quantity over quality when it comes to opossums and rabbits. If a few of the babies don't really do super well, that's fine, because there's 100 more to back them up. So they very much are a numbers game for them. Then we've got the mourning dove, so about 7% of last year's patients. Mourning doves, they're cute. They're just not super smart. Plus, mom will lay down a couple sticks and call it good, and then baby falls out. It is fun, though, because when you have a baby mourning dove that's fledging, they are still very downy underneath their adult feathers, so they look 2 times the size of the parent that's feeding them, and it is hilarious to see. So if you ever see a tiny dove feeding a larger one, that's the baby. Then, of course, we had someone say raccoons, roughly 4%. We get quite a few of those. We actually just had a few really small babies brought into us that we transferred to a facility that was better suited to handle those tiny little guys. But we do treat them. We're actually super excited. 2025 was the first time since Hurricane Ian that we were able to raise baby raccoons all the way to release. Because Ian knocked out our facility, the outdoor enclosures are critical to the success of our patients. If they don't have that outdoor time to, well, reacclimate to Florida, for one, but also to learn how to forage and look for their own food and not be right beside people all the time, they're going to get too used to us, or they're just not going to be successful in the wild, as smart as they are. So with us being able to raise up our first babies, we were very excited for that. It was a milestone. We do actually rabies vaccinate raccoons before releasing them as well, which is helpful. However, with Hurricane Ian, it's the fault of many things, but not this one. With Lee County, we don't really have much of a prevalence of it. In fact, seeing raccoons out during the day, totally fine. That is a myth that seeing them in the day equals disease. It doesn't. Sometimes they just want a noon snack, whereas we want a midnight snack. Or mom has babies screaming at her for food, and she has to get them food, which I'm sure a lot of you can identify with. And then last there, we have the squirrel. We have the eastern gray squirrel is one of our more common patients. They pop up a lot in the fall. Well, fall down a lot in the fall. So there's a lot of them too. They're very cute, but they also get kidnapped. Same with rabbits, and I'll tell you more about that in a minute. We do also see 2 species of red squirrel, fox squirrels. Not super often, but we do. Even more rare, we will see the flying squirrel. Not everyone's aware. They're actually really prevalent in the area. However, they're nocturnal and they're small, so we don't see them super often. But we actually just had 4 babies brought in over the last 4 months, whereas there hadn't been a single baby brought in before that since I've been here. So that was very interesting to see. All right, what do y'all notice from this? Where's the bump?
March, yeah.
Yeah, it's like March to May to June. Yeah, so this is our patients admitted each month throughout 2025, and this is the number. This is baby season. Everything is having babies at that point. So we're getting a lot of babies in, especially after a storm. We always brace ourselves if it's been really windy for the last day or two, because usually there's going to be an influx of babies. Most frequent circumstances of admission, orphan is on here, but also included in orphan is abduction. When I mentioned that rabbits and raccoons and squirrels get kidnapped a lot, it's not that someone is trying to take them necessarily, it's they think they're trying to help them by bringing them to us. Their best chance is with mom, and sometimes mom just isn't there when you notice them. For rabbits, mom only visits for a couple minutes, dawn and dusk, that's it. Otherwise, she is staying away from that nest because she would bring predators to that nest if she came too often. Anything and everything that eats meat will eat a rabbit, so she doesn't want to lead anything to that nest with those babies that haven't quite started emitting the hamburger scent quite yet, whereas mom has. Next, we have physical trauma and undetermined. We usually have a pretty good idea of what happened in these, but to keep our analytics as accurate as possible, we're going to try and put them into one of these if we're not sure they were hit by a car. You'll notice up here, vehicle collision, 18.4. Good chance that these two were vehicle caused. But we want to be able to show that for research purposes. We don't want to skew results if we're like, this was probably a car, and then it wasn't. That can mess up any research that we wanted to utilize. So we'll put them in one of those categories instead. Physical trauma, there's abrasions, they have head trauma. We just can't say for certain what happened. Undetermined, we get red-shouldered hawk juveniles in a lot, usually right around the fall, because they have been released onto their own. Their parents are no longer helping them, and then they just fail to thrive, and so we call it downed hawk syndrome. We don't really know for sure what's causing it, so they go into undetermined, but it's usually a failure to thrive situation where they just left home and couldn't figure it out. So it's like a kid coming back after 18, which my parents got to have me back a few times. Oh, sorry. Finally, there's dog interaction. Dogs are a big reason we'll see things like gopher tortoises. Keeping them on a leash is very important. Checking your yard before letting them run off if you have a fenced yard, very important. Same for the beach. Dogs are not, even if they're super well trained, they're still instinctual. So if they see a rock that's moving, they're going to be curious about the rock that's moving. And just like toddlers, they explore with their mouths. So they're going to go up and they're going to kind of chew on it and try to figure out, is this food? Is it a toy? And then they go from there. And it can cause a lot of damage to gopher tortoises, but also other animals in general. If any animal is ever brought into your home by a cat or dog, especially a cat, they need to be brought in because they could have some internal stuff going on. They have really sharp and blunt teeth. But in addition, they could get bacterial infections, especially from that cat mouth. That's why humans that get scratched by a cat, we need to clean it, or you can get something called cat scratch fever. I love cats, but they are the enemy of many a conservation story, unfortunately. All right, so this is where we're going to talk a little bit more about what you can do if you do find an animal that needs help. So there's a few things. Number one, we want you to call us. That's because if it is a baby animal, we can maybe tell you, leave it alone. That way they don't come back to us. We will always attempt re-denning or re-nesting if possible, but sometimes we just don't have enough information to go off of. So those babies that could have been left in the wild are brought to us. And while they're with us, they're safe, they're being fed and everything, but our goal is release. So if mom and dad aren't there to teach them those critical behaviors or how to utilize their instincts, they're going to be less successful because we will do our best, but we can't teach an owl to owl, unfortunately. We can try, but we aren't good at it. All right, and then we have, do they need help, species, and location. So first, do they need help? What do y'all think? Does this baby need help if you find it alone?
No.
Trick question, maybe. If they're just in the nest, probably not. If your cat brings them to you, yes. I'm saying this because if you see a little baby like this completely on its own, this one should still be in the nest. So there could be something going on there. You would want to call so we can basically troubleshoot IT with you. What about this little guy? If you see him hopping around?
He's good.
He's good. So baby rabbits, once they're about the size of a $1 bill, they're solo. Mom's already had her next litter. She might still be in the general area, but she's not really taking care of them anymore. So they're quite small when they're on their own. This one, for example, his ears are up and he's floofy. If they have their ears down and they're still kind of smooth fur, most likely they're still in the nest. Once they fluff up and their ears go up, they're pretty much ready to be out and about on their own. Tip, if you have to chase and capture an animal for a few minutes or an hour, it's probably fine to leave it alone. Finally, we have an adult down there. Do they need help? You're so cute. All right, what about this little guy? Probably. Yeah, so this one's in a human hand, which kind of helps, but that one is still really little. He doesn't have much fur. His eyes and ears are open, but they look like they just recently opened up. For that little baby, if you ever see a baby raccoon left out in the middle of your yard, baby squirrel left out in the middle of your yard, give them time, mom will come back. Opossum moms don't care. If the baby falls off the back, she's done with them, good luck. Natural selection, you didn't hold on tight enough, goodbye. Because she can have up to 13 on her back at a time. She can give birth to over 24 at a time, but she's limited to how many teats she has in her pouch because they're marsupials. So they're born very premature and tiny little pink jelly beans. They actually have little claws. They then climb into the pouch and those claws fall off, and then they develop further from there. They actually also cannot suckle. Instead, when they're still in the pouch, they're fused to the teat that they get to, and then it kind of supplies them with that. It's almost like a new umbilical cord. You can almost consider it. And then once they're on the back, they kind of have that ability, and they're going to be scavenging alongside mom at that point. This little guy, do opossums hang from their tail? I'm tricking you. So this little one is, but that's because he was falling. They do have that tail, which is prehensile. People call it a rat tail, but just like we don't have fur on our palms, they don't have it on their tails because they need it to help them catch things and hold on. They utilize that for balance and a lot of different things. They're excellent climbers, but they too fall to gravity a few times. So if they do, that tail a lot of the time can be their saving grace. However, they're going to want to quickly latch on with their back legs as well. If you look at other photos of baby opossums hanging from the tail, a lot of the time you'll notice the feet are also hanging on because that's attached to their spinal column. That is their spinal column. So if you're holding something by its spinal column, that's probably not going to do a whole lot of good for that very sensitive spinal cord. So they don't want to hang from it very long. However, they can catch themselves. Babies will sometimes do it just because they're playing. It's like a kid hanging upside down from monkey bars. Not good for you, but they'll do it. And then we've got this little guy. What about him? No. Actually, both of these. They're actually fine. Juvenile opossums also leave mom when they're quite small because, again, she can have 13 on her back. She's going to shake them and run at some point. So she wants to be able to continue to move. She most likely has some new babies in the pouch. She could even be pregnant. So they can have 3 stages of babies at a time. She can be pregnant, and she can actually pause that pregnancy, which must be nice, and say, you know, there's not a lot of good resources right now, so we're going to pause this. We'll come back to you later. So she can pause. And then she'll have babies in the pouch that are growing, and then she can have the babies on the back. So just like kangaroos, they can be pregnant. They also can pause that pregnancy. They might have a joey in the pouch and then a joey outside of that pouch. Okay. Do they need help? A few other pictures here. These are some that are commonly abducted, kidnapped. So we have some baby raccoons here. This little guy just broke through a wall. Image 1 of why they do not make a good pet, by the way. They are wild animals, even if you train them from the moment they're born. They're wild. So with these little guys, at this age is a little trickier. It's more a call us, let us know the situation, if they're injured, etc. But also sometimes, depending on the situation, you don't want to necessarily rescue a raccoon because even though we have a low prevalence of Lee County rabies, there's still that chance. And so we need to be careful, and we might send someone out that's vaccinated and trained to handle that rescue instead. We'll talk more about that in a minute though. Baby birds, both of these guys are good and ready to go, as angry as they look. So their feathers are out and emerged. They don't have any pin feathers. So if you look here and see these little capsules around the feathers, those are pin feathers. They're still growing. And then he's just naked in general. But these two are nice and floofy, and more importantly, they're perching. When they can perch and stand up, that's like walking on tippy toes, because this first bend is actually the ankle. So they will walk around on their tippy toes. When they're babies, they're too weak to do that, so they're sitting back on their haunches. So that's a good way to tell if they can run, hop, kind of fly. If mom and dad are dive bombing you, they're fine. Of course, if they're like right next to the road or you have a cat around, you can kind of shuffle them out of the way. But for the most part, they're good to be left where they are. It is a myth that touching them means mom abandons them because of your smell. That is we shot ourselves in the foot with that one. So rehabilitators at the time were seeing a lot of these fledglings kidnapped, even though they were okay. It's a dangerous time when they're on the ground, but they have to go through it. So when they would bring in these little fledglings, they're like, well, put them back, please, or try to, or I guess we have to raise them, and that's a less successful chance for them in the wild. So they started saying, if you touch them, mom can smell it, and she's gonna leave them. That's not true. Birds actually have a terrible sense of smell. So instead, of course, if you sit there and play with them, mom is gonna leave because she feels like that's dangerous. Although raptors are a little bit more patient. We actually had to take out a couple baby eagles before I was here, and those 2 baby eagles were replaced into their nest a week later, and mom and dad immediately started taking care of them again. So it's dependent on species, but for the most part, re-nest them, they're good. Just don't play with them. Then we've got the fawn. We don't really see fawn often. They're not really found until you're closer to North Fort Myers, but occasionally we'll have one brought in. We'll then send them up to a North Deer Sanctuary so they can age up with them and then be released. There's 2 pictures here. One of these fawn need help and one of them do not. Can anyone guess which is which? Well, one is more likely needing help.
The one crawled up on the ground on the left.
The one on the left? I heard someone say the right. Yeah, so it's actually this one, the one on the right. So this little guy, his ears are curling. And that is one of the first signs of dehydration, meaning they've not had milk for quite a bit. So mom has not been back to feed them. She could have been hit by a car, she could have abandoned them, we don't know. But once the ears start to curl, that can be a sign they need help. However, if you ever see a baby like this, ears are up, very cute. Mom knows that animals that might want to eat her baby are less likely to approach human buildings, so they will put baby against a human building, tell them to wait, and then go do the deer thing, and then come back for them. When I worked in Alaska, this is my favorite story I was ever told. My boss, he had taken a group out to the river in Kenai Fords, which is where the really big bears are, the grizzlies. And when they went over there, they were sitting and watching bears from a really good distance, but then they hear a bunch of crashing to the side of them, and a female bear comes running past. She whips around and stops right behind them, and then behind her comes out a huge male grizzly, who then pauses because he sees the people. The bear was hiding behind the people for safety. Because she's like, oh, we don't like these things, so if I hide behind this thing, that guy will probably leave me alone. And so he said they were just like sitting there frozen, like, okay, guess we're just gonna do this. And they sat there really still. They made themselves nice and big, actually, and made the noises they needed to. And eventually the female did take off, and the male did a really big roundabout and went after her after that. Species is very important when it comes to rescue. I already kind of said that when it comes to raccoons or potentially dangerous animals like bobcats, coyotes. Even until the moment that they are too weak to move, they can still try and get back at you. They don't know we're trying to help them. For the most part, they are literally being abducted by aliens, and they will end up being probed when they arrive. So they're not entirely wrong, but they don't know we're trying to help them. They are stressed out, they're terrified, they think we're gonna hurt or kill them, and so they're gonna fight back, which is totally natural, but we want to make sure the person rescuing them can handle that. Especially when it comes to bobcats and a lot of the time foxes as well. We'll send a veterinarian out with the team for rescue so she can actually kind of give them the happy dart to knock them out for a bit so that it's safer to do that rescue. For both, the animal, if they get too stressed, their heart can actually stop and they can die from that. That's known as capture myopathy, which is why we're very hands-off with our patients in the hospital, as long as we can be. This is a killdeer. They're masters of the art of acting. So they will act like they have a broken wing, they'll even drag it, and you'll be like, oh no, and you'll go for it. And then if they can hop and fly a little bit and then do it again, they're fine. They're just trying to get you away from their eggs or their babies. So they will play dead, not play dead, sorry. They will play injured so that they look like an easy catch for food, but the babies are safer. Burrowing owls, they are probably a lot safer for you to try to rescue than something like a bald eagle. And that's another example of just knowing your species and just how they handle themselves. Sea turtles are protected, that if you're in the immediate rescue mode where you're trying to rescue them, for the most part, no one's gonna call you out on that. But legally, you can only touch them if you have a permit for it. So there's a lot of touch and go there. There's the sea turtle hotline here, SCCF, and they can kind of come out and help you. If the turtle's in immediate rescue, no one's gonna call you out on that. Raccoon, we've already talked about them. Bobcat, then we have some bats here, similar thing. They can have diseases and they can bite and scratch, no fun. So we wanna make sure someone trained does the rescue. However, if you do want to help them, you can just scoop them in a towel. They can't do anything through a towel. Then we have Muscovy duck. Those guys are not technically invasive, but that's a definitions game, technicality. They're also not technically wild, which is why they can't be categorized as invasive. They're actually domestic. They were brought from Asia for food, which is also why they're so big. We bred them to be nice and large for food. And then they decided they didn't like being in captivity and they ran away. And then some people released them. And so now we've got a really healthy population of them and they outcompete our natives. So we do not treat these guys. So you would not rescue them, or you can, but you can't bring them to us. Iguana, same thing. What about this guy?
No.
Cane toad.
Cane toad.
I tricked you. This is a native. So that is actually the southern toad. They are native, so we would actually treat them. A lot of the time they might have a bacterial infection or something on their skin, so we just put them in water with some nice froggy safe antibiotic, and they'll be able to be released after that. But you do need to be able to tell the difference. Does anyone know which is which up here?
The cane toad's on the left.
He's on the right. So this is a cane toad. That's a hand. Our toads can get that big, but for the most part, they ain't gonna get that big. So for him, he has this big almond-shaped gland that you almost can't really see super well because it's on his side, almost like a shoulder pad. Whereas up here, their glands are on their back, and they're very round. Theirs are more almondy, theirs are more just round in general. So then you also can look at the very top of the head. I had a hard time finding our native from a sort of top view, but I can still show you. This guy has his eye crest, but then he also has two little horns that run through the middle here. You can kind of see one of them raising right here. Whereas this guy is only gonna have the eye crest. He's not gonna have those horns right here. So if there's two extra little ridges in the middle, that could be a cane toad. Also, if they are the size of a dinner plate, that's a cane toad. They can get quite big. They're a shot ourselves in the foot story as well. We started growing sugarcane up here, and along with the sugarcane came pests. We were like, well, none of our stuff eats these, so we're gonna release cane toads and curly-tailed lizards to eat them. And then they decided they liked our stuff better, and none of our stuff ate them, so that became a problem. Location, location, location. Only step in to help an animal, even if it's just crossing the road with a turtle, if it's safe, right? You need to take your safety into consideration first, and then you can help the animal. We all want to help the animal first. I've made some dumb decisions, but always assess and make sure you are doing something that is safe for you, because if it's not safe for you, it's not safe for them, for you to try and help them at that point. So depending on where it's at, can be a story. In the middle of a busy interstate, probably not safe. I sometimes see a turtle trying to cross the road and I wince because I'm going 70 and I can't stop. And then here we have a city that's kind of 50-50 on if it's safe. There's a crosswalk here, which by the way, this is a fun fact, crows and ravens have learned to read traffic lights. So have coyotes. So they'll see the light turn green or see the little flashing sign with the big red arrow through it saying do not cross, and they won't because they're like, that's when it's not safe. And then they'll see that light turn red and that one show up with a little white person, and they're like, oh, it's safe now because the people are also crossing. So they'll go out and drop like a nut or so in the middle and then go back over and wait for cars to drive over it and crush it, and then they go out and eat it. You can watch videos of this. So you can watch up YouTube videos on this where they will watch the light, and then you actually can watch the crow be like, well, they're not hitting it. This has already happened a couple times. So they'll go out and readjust it a foot or two and then go back away again. They're very smart. Coyotes, you can watch them. They do it here. They'll run right alongside the road, and before crossing it, they look both ways. So animals like raccoons, coyotes, those guys unfortunately get a bad reputation because they're in our areas and we don't like it, and there could be disease and danger to pets. But they just were smart enough to adapt and get used to us. So it's kind of a roundabout story there. Also, when it comes to crows and ravens, they can recognize faces, so they can decide they hate somebody. And so they did research with this where they walked around with a taxidermy crow that was already dead, and they would no longer go near that person even a year after. But then the next person would go through and they act totally normal. They didn't care. They recognize faces. If they're in a big tree, we have a close relationship with the fire department, and they like to call Jim, I don't know if y'all know him, Jim and Mary, but Jim will climb this and hang off the side of the ladder and re-nest something or rescue something, and so they call him that crazy white-haired guy. All right, so this is a rescue story in photos, and this is actually with Jim in the photos. So there's a wood stork right here that's in need of rescue. Jim has his towel and his net there. Wood stork realizes he's there and makes a run for it. Keeps making a run for it. He's running. And then he's finally rescued. So again, these animals don't know we're trying to help them. And a lot of the time when wildlife does come in, it's critical or intensive. So they will go into intensive or critical care as soon as they arrive. It's because, again, they are going to act fine until they can't. Because the second they act sick or wrong, other animals can attack them in the wild. That's another reason we can't release animals that are too used to people, especially if they're imprinted on people, because other animals might mob and attack them because they don't act right, and that could be disease. And so they don't want to let that spread. We also have 6 off-site clinics that are great for using. We are open every day of the year, but we can't be 24 hours a day, unfortunately. We just don't have the resources for that. So instead, these 6 off-sites I have kind of pinned here, they will take in patients for us. So if you're all the way in Naples, it's not very realistic a lot of the time for you to bring an animal all the way out to Sanibel, especially right now in season. So instead, you can take them to somewhere like Blue Pearl, San Carlos, etc., and drop them off there. Blue Pearl is actually 24/7, so you can always drop an animal off there. We still recommend you call because some clinics won't accept adult raccoons, but they'll take the babies, or they won't accept bats, etc., just to protect their own patients. Intake and triage, this is what happens when they get here. It's Christmas morning, there's a paper on it, it tells us what they think it is, but they're not always right on what they think it is. For example, we've had a call for a downed bald eagle that was a downed Muscovy duck. We had someone bring in baby otters. They were adult domestic ferrets that were on the run. We were actually able to get them home, but mis-ID happens. So we do have to carefully check each box. We don't just open it and go. We kind of, to make sure we know what we're getting into. They will also just come flying out, say a bird after a window stun. They hit the window and it's either they die or they kind of get stunned and they'll just sit there. They will come out of that. So you always want to make sure there's a separation between you and the animal you're rescuing if you are. So even if you have to put them in the trunk, we get Osprey that way sometimes. They pull in and they're like, it's in the trunk. And so then we can get them from there. But same thing, even a cardinal, I'll do tours. We look through these windows and try and watch intake if it's there. I've been in the middle of a sentence before and they opened a box and out comes a male cardinal who just starts flying crazily through the room because he woke up and he wasn't happy that he woke up in that circumstance. So I wouldn't be either, to be fair, but they do make sure the doors are closed before opening every box. Another thing we'll do is put animals on the ground to watch how they walk, because that can tell us if there's spinal trauma or something similar, which we can't correct, or if there's something going on like red tide, that makes them really weak. That's going to have different kind of symptoms versus a neurologic issue because their spine has been cut or injured. But they can also run away when we put them on the ground. So the doors are closed. Here is that. So this is, I always forget which is which. If they have yellow feet, that's a cattle egret, right? Does anyone in here know?
No.
I think
Snowy.
snowy. Well, it's either a snowy or a cattle egret. So yeah, this guy's recovering from red tide toxicosis. So he's stumbling, not because his spinal cord is injured, but because the red algae creates a brevetoxin that's neurologic. So as it's in their system, it builds up, and then it makes them really weak. They'll stumble, they'll have eye tremors, etc. This one did make it to release, which is great. So here they're also doing some rehab with him. This is actually not intake. This is treatment after he arose, but we do this in intake. And so they're stretching the wing to get him to move that muscle so it doesn't atrophy while he's in care, etc. These are some other animals we've had brought in, and this is treatment. So this barred owl, B-A-R-R-E-D, which I just learned, they're incredibly invasive to Washington State. I didn't know that, but they are. So see where he's missing these feathers? He has probably had some sort of attack, maybe from a predator or a cat or something, that was going for the feathers, the tail feathers, and got the wing a little bit. So he was most likely attacked by something. And then we have some baby opossums here that we have put in a makeshift pouch to help keep them calm. This is a green sea turtle getting an x-ray when we could treat them. And then this is a black racer. They're all over the island. We see them a lot. Glue traps are terrible. But this is actually something I use in my own house. It's a Zevo trap. So it's the one you plug in with the blue light to get the pests. But with this guy, he also got stuck on it. I think this one was in a garage. So you really only want to use those in the house where you don't have to worry about bycatch, which is other animals getting stuck to it that you didn't mean to get stuck to it. We have to be very careful with this because it can actually rip off. You can see some scales that have been pulled already, and it causes a lot of pain. Here they are triaging a red-shouldered. You'll notice they have the gowns, the mask, the gloves, because even though they're small, they have some sharp talons and that can do damage. So can that beak. So they're going to want to make sure they maintain control of those. This is a student helping restrain. And then this is Dr. Mitchell. She's left us, but she was studying with us for 2 years. She in this photo is checking him over. Raptors can carry avian influenza quite often, or they can carry avian pox. So we always do some neurologic checks outside first if they come in for weakness or for tremors. We just want to make sure, and then we'll bring them inside. Those can be, especially avian influenza, zoonotic. So we don't want human to animal transfer, and that's why we also garb up for this. Admission and treatment. So this is a little baby. And then we've got a bald eagle here. This is actually a juvenile bald eagle. His head is still a lot of brown there. They don't get a fully white feathered head until they're 5. Once they're 5, they're adults, they have the white head. But over time, they'll slowly go white-headed for those first 5 years. So if they're half and half, they're probably a 3-year-old. It's kind of easy to age them. If they're solid brown, they're a yearling or even a fledgling from this year, as we start to see our bald eagles aging up in their nests and getting bigger and bigger. They are doing what I call a beaver tail here, but it's also known as a feather guard, where they will use this medical tape paper that doesn't pull. It just attaches to itself, not the feather. What they're doing here is when they're in care, because they're really weak, they're in a kennel, we don't want them running and brushing their feathers against everything because that leads to that getting messed up. Feathers can get ruffled and pulled, and then they wouldn't be able to fly even once they're better. So that is something we will try and avoid by protecting those. And then that is a barn owl that has been intubated. I almost said incubated. Intubated. So he's getting oxygen and anesthesia while they are doing some checks on him. I think this guy, yeah, you can actually kind of see it. He's bandaged up. Those are elbow guards. Same story. We don't want them to bump those. Just like if you cut your elbow, very hard to get that to stop breaking back open because it's very thin skin and you move it a lot. I think he also had a broken wing, but I can't remember for certain. Just some more. This is a barred owl x-ray. So he's got a broken bone here. This is where they're measuring the density of the bone, and that can also tell them the significance of the break. We have different ages of gopher tortoise here. From the moment they hatch, they're ready to go. People will bring us the tiny little hatchling gopher tortoises because they're tiny and they're cute and they're alone. But that's normal. They will sometimes sneak into the burrow of an adult to hang out until they're big enough to do their own, but they're completely independent from the moment they hatch. We will attempt, if eggs are brought to us, hatching them in-house in our incubators, and then we'll release them where they were found or where mom was rescued from, etc., so they can go back home within a day or two of them hatching. All the way up to an adult. This one has a tube that actually goes through the shoulder into the stomach esophagus. We do that because you don't want to pry open a gopher tortoise beak once to 3 times a day for medicine. Instead, you can walk right up, untape it, uncork it, medicine, set it back in, put it down, walk away. The tortoise is none the wiser, but also we don't get bitten by that beak and we don't stress out the turtle more than we have to. By the way, all tortoises are turtles, not all turtles are tortoises. So if you call it a gopher turtle, you're not wrong. Gopher tortoise is just more correct. It's like one of those nursing questions where they're like, which one of these is more correct? Just to mess with you. And then that's our sea turtle again, getting an x-ray. This is a red-shouldered hawk that's actually getting a blood transfusion. We had an ambassador hawk, a red-tailed hawk named Talon. He was big enough, and right now we also have our great horned owl, Mina. She's big enough. They can donate blood to any owl in the same family as them, or any hawk in the same family as them. Red-tailed and red-shouldered are in the same family, so they can safely donate, whereas great horned owls and barn owls are not. So she, Mina, the great horned, cannot donate blood to barn owls. All the other ones she can, just the barn owls outside of the family. So they don't have blood typing like we do, instead it's family specific. Some more little burrowing owl. We get like 300 of these a year from Cape Coral. He's getting fed, doesn't look super excited about it. And then we've got some juvenile opossums. That hide is roughly this big. So that can give you an idea of how big they are. They're quite small when they're ready to go, about 3 or 4 months old. This is a gopher tortoise that I think was a kidnap case. He's totally fine in this picture, but you don't want to lose him in the grass when you take him outside for outside time. So we gave him a nice big pink stripe so we could always find him. And then here we've got Dr. Maddie Chilcote. She's also since moved on, but she and a veterinary assistant, no, she's a vet tech, are operating on a bird here that kind of looks like an osprey wing, but I'm not positive. So we do everything from the rescue to raising babies through to surgery. Cute photos and videos of babies. So we've got a baby otter here. You'll notice the white spot on the head. We use white out to tell them apart. Because you don't want to give all the medicine to 1 or 2 and miss one. They usually have siblings. And then this is a little baby opossum that's about to be fed. You'll notice this is a big tube because they have to be tube fed. This is a little baby eastern gray squirrel that I brought in. He's curled into the towel there. And then this is a raccoon baby that we had brought in, and we were just taking cute Halloween photos for social media. That, and they have to figure out how to get the food that's inside of it, and when they're doing that, they'll eventually figure out it's a all-you-can-eat bread bowl as well, and they can eat the pumpkin as well. I love pelicans. I never expected them to become one of my favorite patients, but they just have so much personality, individual personalities. This one kept sticking his beak out and opening the shower curtain, and then would just stare at you. And then we'd shut it, and you'd see that beak. Every time. And when they look straight down the beak at you, it's hilarious. And this is a juvenile. His head's still brown. It's not white like an adult with the yellowing around the face. These are some otters. This is our outdoor enclosure that we have since lost, but that is a sand pit. They can go down the slide into it. They need a lot of stuff to keep their mind engaged, just like humans. You don't want to just sit in a white room with nothing to read or do. You need stimulation. It's the same thing, raccoons as well. We'll also put slides that go down into the pool so they can slide in. We'll freeze a bunch of fish and then put a big kiddie pool out with a bunch of ice with some frozen fish in it that they have to find. That's all foraging and getting them ready to go home. This is a black vulture. We've got a gopher tortoise here that is on a DIY tortoise walker. You have to MacGyver quite a bit in wildlife. Not everything's made for them. Imagine that beak and a gas mask. We have to DIY that one too. It's usually a plastic tube with the gas on the end of it. Pelicans are actually mouth breathers, so we can't hold their beak closed. We have to actually keep a finger or two in between each part of the beak so they can continue to breathe as we're restraining them. This is an osprey. This guy has the bumpers there. He's outside, but this is a juvenile, also a girl, so I can tell from the brown speckling around the neck here, this is a girl, but also the eyes are orange. They get yellow eyes as adults. So that's a fledgling or a yearling. This is a sea turtle receiving some rehab, so it's very torturous at the end of this video because he never gets the last piece of sweet potato. And he tries so hard. This is a green sea turtle hatchling. This is when we could treat them. Right now, again, we can't because we don't have the outdoor facility, and without the facility, we don't have the permitting, but we should be ready to go by March. So frustrating. I feel so bad for him. But you'll notice this fin's not moving as much, this flipper. He's injured there. We'll get these guys a lot after they've been blown back onto the beach because of a storm, like a hurricane. Nesting season goes through to October, which is also into hurricane season, with September usually being the height of hurricane season. Last one we'll have here, this is a release. Raccoons are kleptomaniacs. Bye. This is from 2025. He buries it. And the next clip is one of our volunteers rescuing it. You'll notice the kennels are now closed. The juveniles will usually hang out together for a week or two, but they also will stay in family groups. They'll have a territory where they kind of interact with their family groups for a while. Sometimes they'll go off on their own, the males usually, but for the most part, they're pretty family oriented. But you should never relocate an adult for a couple reasons. One, you might be introducing disease that you didn't realize the adult had. So rabies, distemper, they aren't symptomatic right away. So if you take an adult you trapped here and then take them over here to release them, you just introduce that disease without realizing it. But also, they have these family groups. So if you release one into another territory, that family group is going to attack that invader, in their opinion. Our ambassadors. So Crowaline, this is Mina, the great horned owl. She's missing a wing. Ambassadors are animals that can't be released. For our snakes, they were never in the wild to begin with, but for her, she was. Same with our other birds. It's just they couldn't be released. For them, they fell out of their nests as nestlings. These are eastern screech owls. They're only this big as adults. They're the smallest owl native to Florida. Mina is the largest owl native to Florida. They can fly and everything, but they just don't owl the correct owly way to be successful in the wild. They had head trauma when they fell that never resolved. That is Red Fred, our eastern indigo native. This is a corn snake named Cobb. Lord, he's also native. Corn on the cob, we're hilarious. And then we've got LC the ball python, non-native, but they're not Burmese pythons. The Burmese is the one that's really bad in the Everglades that can be the length of a school bus and eat an adult deer. He can't do that. She can't do that. She only gets to about 3 or 4 feet, max, sometimes 5. And they're only listed as potentially invasive. They're not actually invasive to the Everglades. They're pretty small. They don't really find themselves to make more of themselves out there like the Burmese python can. As the oldest adult female, she could maybe have like 20 eggs each year, whereas an adult Burmese python, a huge female, could have like 200. We made it. Well, when's your class? I love that. Thank y'all so much. I do have some crow flyers up here, as well as our January calendar with our presentations we have Monday through Friday. And then even more excitingly, our speaker series. So speaking of Burmese python, last week on Friday, we had Michael Kirkland come out and talk about Burmese pythons. Amazing guy. He runs the most successful Burmese python elimination program in the Everglades or in Florida in general. They received, do you remember how many tons it was? I think they removed like 18 tons of them last time. But yeah, And then we have our January, Monday through Friday schedule here. And then a donation box. We are a nonprofit, so anything you can do is always very helpful for us. But if you can't, you can donate time or just tell people about us. Totally fine either way. Otherwise, thank you very much. I'll put these over here so they're more accessible for you.
Thank you so much.